simple in my town as I grow older.
We thought that education was supposed to prepare children for the future. Well, yes. But how about preparing your children for wealth that you have built? Will education do that? Well, let's find out from two women joining us this morning from Meristem Trustees Limited. Damilola Hassan is here with us. She's the Managing Director, Meristem Trustees Limited. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have Kemi Ojenike, who is the Chief Operating Officer, Meristem Family Office. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
So you are preparing children for wealth. Okay, so why is that a growing concern among successful families?
Yes, it's a growing concern because families over time have seen that the reality manifesting before them is very different from what their expectations were. I mean, the reality regarding how their children are embracing the family business, how their children are prepared, or what they thought was a certain level of preparation that their children had to step into certain roles. The reality before them is now very different from what those expectations are. So it is a major concern. You know, so many complexities in the family dynamics have also just revealed that without being intentional about this preparation, you can miss it. And if you have the opportunity to address, correct, structure while you're very much alive and well, you should take that opportunity.
I would have thought that education would address that. Or is it different from financial literacy? And I mean, what does true readiness for wealth look like in the next generation?
So education is usually a good start. But a good start because we're teaching technical skills, right? Academic skills. But the truth is that the reality what is needed to successfully build and sustain a business and even function in life and lead a wealthy life is more than what is taught in the classrooms. So you have a case where the parents have worked hard, given their lives, blood, sweat, tears to build, right? And they have achieved significant success. But they typically assume that because the children have gone to school, they are well educated in the best global schools, they are equipped to manage that wealth. But what many times, many families fail to pay attention to are the non-academic things required. For instance, the right mindset, interests, the strengths of that child, grit, right? Those practical things that you need to succeed in life. Those practical things you need to ensure that wealth does not overwhelm you. Because what ends up happening is that we have a case where a child has been living their lives, going to school, just living okay. And then they turn 20, 21, and then their parents pull them into a meeting with a lawyer and say, so it's time. I'm going to hand over this business to you. You are taking this over. Meanwhile, all they've known up until that time is that my father works hard, he makes money, he provides for our needs. My mother works hard, she's running a good business. And I kind of know what she's doing. But they're not really involved in the intricacies of it. So what usually happens is that they end up being overwhelmed or disinterested. Because right now, in today's world, globalization, many people have migrated. Many people do no longer live in Nigeria. They're no longer close to the businesses. So imagine calling those children who have established their own lives in another jurisdiction, asking them to take over. They simply are not interested, or they feel like they do not have what it takes to fill those big shoes. And so, like Damilola said, there's a disconnect between the expectation of the parents and the expectation of the children, and that breeds things like resentment, breaks down relationships, and so on and so forth.
It suggests then that there are some mistakes that families have made over time in communicating and managing inheritance.
Yeah.
Such as?
I mean, quite a number. Over time, people have made assumptions. They've assumed that the children are interested in your family business. They've assumed that the children would always be there, you know, to take over. just working on assumptions that you haven't taken time to really fact check, assuming that the children have the capacity and are, even capable of handling the wealth that you're handing over to them. Also, I like to say this on a cheeky note, that the assumption that we will live forever, so there are certain things that we need to do at certain times. If you don't do it, thinking that there's still time, it would lead to a mistake, because you need to take those decisions when you have the right frame of mind, when you can really put all of the facts before you, and you can take decisions, without being in a hurry, or it's not circumstances forcing you to take those decisions. Another key mistake that families, patriarchs, matriarchs have made over time is, this assumption that they know what the outcome will be. Assumptions that our children are fine, they would always work together as one, there would be no rancor, we've trained them up in a certain way, so they would be good. So many of those things, they lead to the mistakes, because when you then realize that what you had assumed was going to be isn't what it is, you then begin to want to quickly take those steps, but sometimes it's a bit too late.
So, what would you say is the solution to some of these issues that you have raised in preparing children for the wealth that their parents built?
I mean, it's important that you have frank conversations as a family. Where are we headed as a family? What do we have? Sit with your beneficiaries. I don't just want to say children, or more often than not is the children. Sit with them, let them understand what it is that you have, what it requires, and get to hear from them. What do they think about all of these things? Don't assume that they want it, or they want to be a part of it. It's also important that we normalize sitting with professionals, to handhold us along this journey. If you don't feel well, you know what to do. You go to your doctor. And you don't go to your doctor and begin to package what your symptoms are, simply because you need solutions. You need, that problem solved. So identifying a professional, professional firms, of course, like Meristem, to handhold you along the journey is really very critical. Yeah.
Okay. I've had this kind of conversation with you guys from Meristem before. Perhaps for those who are wondering what we are discussing, we've heard conversations around trusts and all of that. So, what exactly is a trust, and how does it protect family wealth?
Okay, simply put, a trust is a structure that allows you be very clear about what your intentions are for your family, and puts it in a form that will be implemented in your lifetime and after you're no longer in the picture. So typically, a trust offers a number of benefits where you have, say, the father or the mother who's the settlor, who say, this is specifically what I need to happen. These are some of the risks that I'm trying to avoid, right? I do not want conflict in my family. I do not want the significant assets we have to cause problems in the future. And I understand the key dynamics within my family. I know the risk areas, and I'm being very upfront with myself. So I want to create a structure where I appoint a trustee, usually preferably a professional, a corporate trustee that has a regulatory and fiduciary responsibility to do what I've said. I want to appoint them, give them clear instructions as to how to manage my assets for the benefit of my beneficiaries. And like Dami said, the beneficiary can be your children, your siblings, or whoever else it is. And so what these professionals do is that they create a structure that is outside of you.
Professionals being Meristem.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
Absolutely. We create a structure outside of you that minimizes that key man risk. And I'll give you an example. Usually, without this sort of structure, what has happened is that a wealthy man or woman, they've worked hard, they've acquired assets in their personal capacity. It is being held in their personal capacity. When they are no longer in the picture, there can be some conflicts, stressful processes. This is assuming they have no structure in place, where they have to go through probates, and then the family has to determine how the assets will be administered. With a trust, that does not have to be the case. In your lifetime, you can see how things will play out. You can see how your wishes are implemented in real time. And the way you are no longer there, a trust allows that process to flow seamlessly. I mean, we've had many cases where just the proactiveness of families to put a trust structure in place has saved them unimaginable heartache.
So please, sorry, I know this is not one of the questions, but how does a trust play with a will?
Right, that's a great question, actually. So usually we advise that a will is a great starting point. A will.
Another starts.
So in your let me explain it this way. In your journey, right? When you're thinking of structures, a will is where you essentially say, this is what I have, this is how I want it to be distributed. But as you grow, as your asset base grows, as your needs grow, as your family expands, or when the complexities in your family are just more serious, a will may not be sufficient, because a will is simply distributive. It says, this is what I have, distribute it in this way. And there are very many limitations to it. There are also, some of the process of activating a will can be cumbersome. But with a trust, you have a bit more flexibility. Another key point is that a will takes effect after a person has passed on, not during their lifetime. But with a trust, you can set up a structure where it begins to run in your lifetime. You can see how it works. You can make adjustments as needed. It also gives you a lot of flexibility. You can decide that, okay, I want to distribute this asset, but I don't want to distribute. I want it to be managed. I want the proceeds to be used for a specific purpose. So it allows you to do a lot more, and it can be tailored to the unique needs of your own family.
I wonder what the father of the prodigal son used. Anyway, don't answer that question.
To add to that, I mean, a trust also gives you privacy. So, I mean, once someone has passed and the will is lodged at the probate, you can write to the court to request, to see a copy of the will. But with a trust, your arrangement is very private. It's just between you, the settlor, your trustees, and of course, ultimately the beneficiaries. Another key thing is that with a trust, it allows you to face, how your beneficiaries come into wealth. And a key mistake that some people have made is to make wealth available at once. And then you have maybe young adults come upon wealth at very early stage in life. And you can take that back to the prodigal son. If he had a phased approach to how he got the wealth, he probably wouldn't have squandered it. So allowing you to face how your beneficiaries get the benefits, and allowing you to just track their progress and match it with the level of asset that they're exposed to, the level of control that they get, it helps them to grow into that, and helps them to come up with the responsibility required, to do that.
It's a good one. So when is setting up a trust especially urgent or necessary?
Yeah, ideally, it shouldn't be an urgent. It should be you just having a sit down with yourself and, confronting your issues and then taking that decision. But, I mean, life happens. Sometimes it is triggered by, let's say, maybe a medical situation. You get a medical report, a terminal illness, and then you suddenly realize that I don't have as much time as I thought I had. Sometimes as well, it's just about you sitting down to look at the complexities of your family. You are a man with several wives, several children across from different women. As simple as your family tree can be and as complex as your family tree can be would determine the urgency with which you need to, quickly get to sit with us and have, okay, I said us, yes, and have these conversations, because you don't want, some people say, I'll be long gone, whatever it is they can do with what is left. It's your legacy. You have put in sweat, blood, you have built all of those things. Do you really, really want it to go to waste when you're no more? So because you don't want it to, and also because you may have people who are very much dependent on you. You may have vulnerable people within your circle of beneficiaries that you want to provide for. You know, it's important that you quickly get to sit with your professionals and have these conversations. It doesn't matter what stage of life you are, just get it started and then build it up over time.
What does it take to start one? Someone is watching you now and is thinking, okay, these women are making sense. I want to take some action. What does the fellow need to do right now?
Literally one call. I would say that first sit with a professional, like Meristem trustees, like let's have a conversation, because like we mentioned, no two families are the same. So there's no boilerplate system. What your family's priorities and your priorities are might differ from that of mine. So the first thing you want to do is, first of all, decide. I could say that's the first thing. Decide that, okay, I'm ready to go on this journey. I'm ready to put this structure in place. That decision is important because depending on how simple or complex the system is, you may start and then you realize that, oh, there's a lot that needs to be done, and then you pull back. But it's important to decide. And then sit with a professional, like Meristem trustees, discuss what your goals are, and they will guide you through, or we will guide you through the step-by-step that you need. So usually what happens is after you sit with a professional, we understand your needs, we understand what you're trying to achieve, and then we'll be able to create those structures for you, go through a lot of comprehensive reviews and adjustments. And once that is done, it's that simple. You have a trust in place and we just begin to manage it.
Yeah. I mean, you can just simply send an email, trustees@meristemng.com, if I'm allowed to say that. And a simple email to say, I listened to you, Damilola, I would like to get started. Sometimes we just start by administering a questionnaire. Let's even understand where you are. And I've discovered that a lot of times people don't even have a very clear picture of where they are. How often have people taken time to document what their actual net worth is? Have you taken time to document what your assets are, what your liabilities are? What sort of title do you have on those assets? Some of the assets that you think are yours, they are in actual fact not yours, because it is the title that confers ownership. But when you boast of certain assets, and those assets are still in, I mean, like real estate, the assets are still in the name of the family that sold it to you, but they gave you one piece of paper, and then you walked away thinking that, you know, so we help you to even understand where you really are. And then we point out what you need to do. Perhaps you founded your company several years ago, and then because you needed more people to join you as shareholders, you distributed shares across siblings, cousins, and then in your mind you think, I'm the owner of this company. No, you're not. You are a part owner of that company. For anyone that you have given shares to, as long as there's no nominee agreement, there's so many things will help you to really see, and you can begin to then correct some of those mistakes. We'll just really hold you and help you to walk that path.
I know you have spoken to this earlier, but I'm going to ask it again for emphasis. How can trusts help prevent disputes and ensure fairness?
In the simplest way to understand it is structure. What a trust helps you to do is that it helps you prevent a situation where you're leaving many things to assumption, right? So when you have a structure in place, particularly when you know that the family dynamics are a bit complex and the possibility of conflict is high, a trust would help to minimize the occurrence of that conflict because you have put in place very specific guidelines as to what should happen. Bear in mind that a trustee is a registered, regulated professional that has very specific duties to you to implement your requirements as defined in that trust deed. So what that means is that even if conflict arises, there is a guiding structure that you have put in place that will not only protect your assets, but also your beneficiaries. And so it's a case where it's like you're building a house, and the trust is a strong foundation. Even when storms come, you can rest easy knowing that that house is protected. That's what a trust does for you. It's you not leaving anything to chance. It's you reducing the risk of conflict that can tear your family apart.
Okay. So can it be contested in court? Someone says, look, I have a will. That means the will nullifies everything else.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, that's not part of the question.
are you referring to the will now?
Yes,
The
say,
trust?
okay, someone says, okay, there's a trust, and the fellow, who set up the settlor, as you said,
Yes.
has died. And of course, as you said, that the trustee is still active even beyond the person's death and all. And someone comes and says, look, this man, even though he had a trust, he also had a will. Which one takes precedence?
Okay, so the beauty of these tools, a will, a trust, is that they can work together. With a will, you are specifically saying that this asset that I own should be given to X, Y, Z. You are defining the asset and defining who gets it. With a trust, you have actually transferred that asset while you are alive to your trustees to administer for your beneficiaries now that you're alive and when you're no more. So technically speaking, whatever assets are held in trust are no longer your assets. So there's no basis for contention because those assets cease to be your assets at the point when you transferred to the trustee. So there are several structures around how these transfers are done and how documentation is done to ensure that the integrity of the entire process is secured.
Just a quick one. The email you gave the other time?
Yes, trustees@meristemng.com. TRUSTEES. Trustees@meristemng.com.
Okay. We have to thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Been speaking with Damilola Hassan, who is Managing Director, Meristem Trustees Limited, as well as Kemi Ojenike, Chief Operating Officer, Meristem Family Office. Thank you.